Hey everybody, welcome back. We're back in the conversation with Mark Stephenson from UW-Madison and Kevin Bernhardt from UW-Platteville. I'm John Shutske, Agricultural Safety and Health Specialist. I'm going to turn things over to Kevin. Lots of perspective in terms of where we're at right now financially with the COVID crisis and just some things that are happening in our world right now.
Yeah, thanks, John. We've had lots of conversations like everybody else has had about what are the impacts of COVID-19 on the dairy industry. We know there's a lot of personal impacts, a lot of nationwide, worldwide impacts, but how about the dairy farm business operations themselves? What kind of impacts are they having? And one way that we sort of channeled that into being able to think about it in a more compartmentalized way is, what are the challenges we're facing today? What are those decisions that have to be made today? What are the risks that we're having to face today versus those that might be coming up in the next weeks or might be coming up even in the next months ahead? So, because nobody knows how long this is going to last or how long the economic recovery is going to be. So if we talk about some of those that are happening right away today, as we discovered in our last segment, and certainly as producers know, the price for milk has just completely fallen. If I'm remembering right, I go back to January, the beginning of January. For the May contract, it's fallen about $4 a hundredweight. I mean, just a huge amount of equity loss there with respect to prices falling. That's going to create potentially some hardships out in the operations and being able to pay bills in the short run. So what can people do to try to get their arms around that particular decision of just getting the bills paid in the month ahead? And a variety of possibilities there. One of them is that I'm going to just share real quickly is be transparent with those people who are involved with your operation, transparent with your spouse, transparent with your business partners, your employees, and certainly with your lender. You don't want to bring the lender in at the end of this process. You want that lender to be a part of it from the beginning, as well as those people that you owe. So talk to them. They are suffering from things as well. We need to be working this out together, not trying to hide from each other, so to speak.
Kevin, let me just add a couple things to that. I think you make some really important points, the transparency piece and communication. One reminder for people, you didn't mention kids, and right now we have kids that are home from school, and with things being stressful on the farm and this kind of new world that we're in and the uncertainty right now, kids, even little kids, pick up on some of the stress. So finding ways as a family, don't try to sugarcoat this too much with your kids. Obviously, you don't want to show a 7-year-old a balance sheet and try to help them understand the depth of, but that family communication is really important. The other thing that I'll just mention to our group here that might be watching is when you're talking about communicating and thinking and planning and trying to determine what's high priority that has to be done in the next few weeks versus the next 6 months or whatever, it can be really, really difficult to do this. When we talk about this whole notion of stress, sometimes people think about stress as like, oh, I just can't handle something, or I just tend to get all this combobulated when I'm stressed. But the reality is these stress chemicals that are being fueled by the uncertainty, the market conditions, the weather, whatever that might look like here in the next couple weeks, just the uncertainty with the virus and the stress hormones, especially if you're not sleeping well, not eating well, it really does have a direct effect on your brain. The stress hormones of cortisol and adrenaline, they actually numb the prefrontal cortex. That's that frontal part of the brain that helps us make decisions. It's also the part that helps us have like really good, thoughtful conversations with our loved ones and with our banker. And so I'm just teasing a little bit here for some stuff that I've been doing. It's really important that you think about the brain, you think about the positive ways that you can throttle down that negative stress response to be able to do the kinds of things you're going to talk about here.
And I don't know if there's ever been a time when we've had to have more of a clear head about thinking ahead than we have to right now. And that's at the very same time, John, as you mentioned, these different stressors are hitting people. So taking care of your mental health is going to go a long ways towards taking care of your financial health as well. I absolutely agree.
I'll give you a couple just quick ideas. I mean, one of the things, when we talk about the things you'll talk about here, getting started, taking the time to actually sit down and to try to be thoughtful about things in the future. I do worry sometimes because, I can say this because I've talked with 4,000 people in the last year and a half, but as guys, when things get really stressful and you know that your back's up against the wall, the common reaction is often, I'm just going to go out. Instead of working 75 hours a week, I'm going to work 95 hours. I'm going to put my head to the grindstone and plow through it. And that's when people get sick, they get hurt, and bad things happen if you don't take that time.
It also kind of keeps you from thinking about what needs to be done in the longer term as well. That 90 hours a week may be great for getting stuff done this week, but how about the cash flow that needs to take place next week, next month, 2 months from now, etc. And of course, we can't go into the details here, but a big challenge that I believe farms are going to have in the months ahead and the weeks ahead is being able to cash flow. I don't even think we're talking about profitability right now. We're just wanting to cash flow to the other side of this situation. So we need to start thinking about ways to eke out some extra cash inflows or to be able to reduce some of those cash outflows. We may not want to buy capital assets right now any more than we have to. We may want to develop some practices that try to increase cash inflows, perhaps dry off some cows quicker, call some of the low producing cows quicker so that we can get some of that cash flow. We may have to work with the bank to do interest only payments or restructure our debts. A variety of other kinds of things that we have to be creative about. And it's hard, that's where we need that clear-headed thinking.
How about selling some underperforming assets?
Selling some underperforming assets. That might be a tractor that you're not using much. That might be some machinery that's underutilized. It might be some land even that is not the best productive, or it's further away from your operation, or it's on the other side of town and you're getting tired of driving through town to be able to get to it. Whatever the case might be, that may be some of the things that we need to do today, the tough conversations, the tough decisions that we might have to make to preserve the long-term outlook for our operations.
Kevin, though, just to emphasize that it's about action. It's about doing some things in a prioritized way, getting your head back in the game in terms of what you can focus on, the things you can control, whether that's the planning, the pieces Mark talked about, or also the one that I worry about right now. I know it's really haunting a lot of our bigger dairy employers or big dairy operations. What happens if I have a couple workers who show up to work and they've got 103-degree fever? How do I handle that? So you do need to be thinking a little bit about, you need to be thinking a lot about how am I going to deal with this virus situation in the coming weeks with my employees? What kinds of policies do I need to make sure? Do I have a sick leave policy? What's the protocol if somebody wakes up sick? How do they call in? You obviously don't want them showing up for work. But the more you can think about like the what ifs and have a plan for it, the less stressful that will be. Just like all these other things, taking some action and getting things onto paper is a tool for alleviating stress.
That's right. I mean, if I had a recommendation for producers, if I'm going to put my 90 hours in this week, I'm going to spend a half of that time just doing some contingency planning for what happens if my workers get sick, what happens if my milk hauler gets sick, what happens if the plant gets the virus running through it and they have to close down for a couple of days and I don't have a place to deliver my milk. What are my contingency plans if these variety of things that I hope will never happen, but I better be ready in case they do.
Yeah, it's no time to put your head in the ground.
That's absolutely right. Yeah.
So guys, we've got about 10 minutes here, and I think we'll probably with this video provide some additional links to other resources on some of the things we've talked about, and we'll continue this conversation over the next few videos.